Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast this week. I'm so excited you're here as always. Honestly, I say this all the time, but my podcast is seriously like one of my favorite things that I do in my business. So when I have to go to do it, when I get to go do it, it's really, really a good time and I really enjoy it and I'm glad you're here. And I just want to say a little thank you to you in your ears, from me to you, very personally, as sincerely as I can imagine, because, without people listening, it just isn't really, it's like just the thing that goes live that just exists in a world that means nothing. So you, the listener, gives it meaning, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate you. Just a quick update on what's going on in the world in the world of me anyway, not in the actual world, but just my world before we jump in. So in about 8 weeks, we will be opening the doors back up for the Honor You Lab. And if you are not on the wait list or you're not anywhere on my email where you're seeing me announce this and able to join, please go to the show notes. There should be a link in there for you to put yourself on the list to join the next cohort. And also, I've got a brand new offer that's free. And that offer is basically an introduction to honoring yourself. And so if you want to just jumpstart and not wait for the lab, go ahead and grab that. Also in show notes, it's a 3-part series that will be delivered directly to your email, and it'll get you going on how to honor you. And in that, I gotta explain a little bit more about how I came to do this work, what it means to me, what my definition of honoring yourself is, all the fun stuff. So jump in there, grab that in the show notes. And that's about it for now. Yeah, that's about it. What's going on. So let's get to it, shall we? So this week, I want to talk about how outsourcing your life leads to an unrecognizable you. And the reason I was inspired to talk about this, and I'll jump into kind of what it all means here in a second, but the reason I was inspired to talk about this is, a lot of the work that I do and a lot of the coaching sessions that I host through the Honor You Lab and just kind of casual conversations sometimes even, what I hear a lot of people feel like is that they lived this life, that they built this life, and when they get sort of midway point, and I consider midway about 35, assuming 70 plus is like gravy. So when you get to about 35 or so, that's when you start kind of questioning, what am I doing? Who am I? And the reason for that is because, at 35 or 40, somewhere in that vicinity, there's a lot going on, right? You're probably a decent place in your career, meaning you've probably been doing some level of career from like around the age 22. So now we're 10 plus years into our career. Maybe you've gotten married, maybe you've had children. So now your children are starting to get into that 7+ year old age frame or more. And that allows you a little bit more freedom to think about what you want as a person instead of being a parent. This is a time in life where we start realizing, hey, like I might have solid 35 more years left of my life that are going to be quote unquote good. And what do I want to do with that? So there's all sorts of reasons. Some people are starting to look more toward retirement, depending on their situation, right? So depending on how long they've been doing what they've been doing. So there's variations of, or variables to, why we start becoming curious about who am I, what do I really want, and seeking things other than the painfully obvious, right? I want, I want to get married and have a family. I want to go to college. I want to start my career. Like those things are just sort of like in our face at such a young age that our brain really just focuses on that and gets the job done, so to speak. And then when the job is quote unquote done, not fully, but kind of, then that's when we start really going more toward this place of like, actually, who am I and what do I want? So that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I run into this a lot with some of the folks in my program and just friends and family. And even I personally experienced this. I remember distinctly when I got let go of my corporate job, my executive job, I called my business coach. We had a coaching session. And one of the biggest things that came out of our coaching together was me just having this like clear understanding. It was like I had this vision of some woman standing across this rickety bridge, and there was a lot of fog, and I could see her over there. I just wasn't quite sure who she was. And that's how I explained it to my business coach. So a lot of the work that we did was discovering who that was. Who am I without my big fancy executive career? Who am I if I'm not sitting around all day, every day, trying to push and push and push and meet my goals and meet my objectives? I was in sales my whole life, so that was a big part of who I was on a day-to-day basis. What's wrong with my team? What does my team need? I was just consumed with this identity. And so when that identity went away, then it was like, okay, now what? So with that all being said, that was the inspiration for this week's episode. And I think that what happens with us is, because we outsource all of those things, when we start outsourcing our life, and that leads to an unrecognizable us, we don't know who we are. The outsourcing comes very early on in life, right? Like the outsourcing comes from our parents, and it comes from schools and teachers, maybe some of our friends. And nowadays it's heavily handed in technology, right? We go to Google, we go to AI, we ask questions about our own selves and what our own desires are. And so when we start doing all that outsourcing, again, we get to that place around like 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and we think, is this it? Is this who I want to be? Is this who I am? And so what can happen from all of that is, we end up being influenced or pressured to go to the wrong school, or we get into the kind of wrong hobbies, ones that we think everybody wants us to do, or extracurricular activities like sports or something, like I'm sure there's probably some athletes out there that they were just really athletic. That became their identity. And then they kind of get to that place where like, I don't even enjoy this sport anymore. I'm not doing it because it's fun. I'm doing it because I was athletic and everybody said I should, right? So you can kind of get into this place where, you go to the wrong school, you do the wrong hobbies. And when I say wrong, they're not wrong on the basis of external factors. They're wrong for you and your soul and your purpose on this earth. Wrong. It's a loose word. I'm using, for those of you who can't see me, I'm using my finger air bunny quotes, wrong. So that can lead also to being with the wrong person. Your mom and dad just had this vision of you marrying a finance guy and having all this money, and mom always told you and grandma always told you, go honey, go get a man with money, he'll take care of you, you won't ever have to worry about anything. And then you find yourself in this marriage with a lot of money but not a lot of depth, right? And not to say that money is inherently wrong, but it can just be the wrong relationship for you, and you were motivated to get into it for sake of what mom and grandma told you was the right thing to do, right? If you outsource your life and you look for who you should be, this can also lead to taking the wrong career path. I mean, this is a really big one. I know a lot of people have heard like these stories where their parents were doctors, so they were supposed to become doctors. Their parents were lawyers, so they were supposed to become lawyers. Or kind of the opposite happens, where like nobody has been to college in your lifetime. So, or like in your history or your family history. So you're like, I'm going to be the first to go get a doctorate, or I'm going to be the first to be the first lawyer in my family. So you kind of get this idea, that this fantasy of becoming something that you're not even really checked in with on yourself. It's just this external factor coming into play, right? So you can go on the wrong career path. You can end up living in the wrong place. I think there's a lot of people who get stuck living where they live because they feel pressure to stay around their parents or their family, or the family unit is so important. You can't leave the family unit. You must stay here. So all of that outsourcing our life to external pressures, leads us to this place where we kind of wake up not knowing who we are or what we even like or what we even want, aka an unrecognizable us, an unrecognizable self, right? We are so far removed from what we came here to be and what our soul wants, and it's because we've outsourced. And by the way, we're not to blame for the outsourcing. It's kind of just what happens in life. And honestly, I don't even know if it's wrong or bad, right? I think it's all part of the learning process and becoming who we came here to be. And if we do experience this situation where we went to med school because our whole entire family was full of doctors, and then we become a doctor, and then when we're doctoring, we start having panic attacks and anxiety. So then our soul says, hey, and so then we have to go through that process of reconnecting with our soul. And I think that's really beautiful. So honestly, like, even if we go down these paths and then we wake up and we're like, I don't know who I am, I don't know what I want, I would still say that's all part of the beautiful picture that God has created for us. And this is what we came here to be, and this is what we came here to do. So again, like, even though I'm talking about this, and as I'm talking about it, I know that for sure, even if it feels kind of wrong or bad, or gosh, I can't believe I've woke up at 55 and I don't even know what I want to do in life, it's okay. It's part of the process. It's part of who you came here to be. It is part of what your soul desires to experience, because as your soul learns, therefore you become who you came here to be, right? So it's all just a beautiful ride, isn't it? So, but back to the point of how outsourcing your life leads to an unrecognizable you. And honestly, again, if you're at that place, if this resonates with you and you're like, gosh, yeah, I don't know what I want, I don't know who I am, welcome to your awakening. And maybe what you've led you here is something that feels really terrible, like anxiety and panic attacks, or a massive realization you don't want to be in the marriage you're in, and gosh, now you got to go through the divorce. The divorce is tough. Maybe you've got kids involved, and are they going to be hurt in the process? So there's this idea, right, that if you're at that place that it's bad or wrong, actually no. It might feel tough though. I will warn you, it can get messy. So just buckle up if that's you. So then the question becomes, how do we move away from this outsourcing our life to the point of being unrecognizable even to ourselves? How do we move away from that and back to ourselves? And ultimately, the very short answer is you start building a relationship with yourself. You reconnect with yourself, aka you learn how to honor yourself, which, again, we're not to blame when we don't know how to do this. A lot of people in my program, the Honor You Lab, people will say to me, I've never been taught how to do this. No, of course not, because everything in life starts becoming this ants marching experience, right? I call it the conveyor belt syndrome, or the, floating down the river syndrome. And it's not until you get to that place when you're floating down the river where you pick your head up and you look around, and you're like, where am I? What am I even doing on this river? And then you paddle to the side of the bank and you get off the boat and you get off the riverside or the riverbank, and you start exploring wherever you are and whoever you are in that moment to figure out yourself, right? And so we're not to blame for this. It's just kind of life. And there's very few people in this world who kind of pump the brakes on the ants marching, and pump the brakes on the river floating, and pump the brakes on the conveyor belting. And they go, hold on, I know, Mom and Dad, you want me to go to college, but like, that's not resonating with me. Or I want to just go start a company. There's a lot of like 15-year-olds out there that have access to YouTube now. And so I think it's becoming a different conversation, but a lot of the millennials, a lot of the Xers grew up in an environment where this is just what you do. Don't ask questions about it. Don't even question it, period. And there's a lot of people who, have children and they see their friend letting their child not go to college, and they think, I would never not let my child go to college. And it's like, guys, if your child doesn't want to go to college, it's fine. It's okay. They will figure it out. And I know that parents want that for their children because they see that as the gateway to a good life, right? And so I get it, but there's a lot of people who end up not doing that and going against the grain and building beautiful lives for themselves, becoming entrepreneurs or, inventing something or whatever. So when I say all this, I'm not falling into this camp of your kid just gets to F all and be lazy and not contribute to life. I think there's probably something else going on there if that's the case. But if they're contributing to society and that's, you see them kind of living who they want to be, and that's all you can really ask for, right? So a bit of a tangent there. But the point is, if you want to find a way back to yourself or even find yourself for the first time ever, then you have to take this process of building a relationship with yourself and learning how to honor yourself, aka learning how to hear yourself and what it is you want, and allowing yourself or giving yourself the permission to listen to yourself and understand what it is you want. So when we talk about this, one of the best ways and easiest ways to explain how to do this thing of listening to yourself, building a relationship with yourself, is start listening to or paying attention to and addressing emotions. And the reason I love to start there is because I always say your soul speaks in emotions. And so for you to start down this path of really figuring out who you are, what your soul came here to be and do and experience, you have to have the access point to your actual soul. And what I really get bothered about in New Age conversations about following your heart and following your soul is nobody's actually telling you how to do that. It's just like, hey, if you want to change your life, if you want a different marriage, if you want a different experience with your children, if you want a different career, if you want to figure out what it is you want to do when you grow up, just listen to your heart, follow your heart. But then that's it. It's like a punctuation and we don't go any further than that. And so it's like, well, how do I do that? That was my question mark all the time. Like people would, Melissa, just listen to your heart. Just follow your heart. I'm like, how? I don't know how to do that. So if you're a big how person like me, I want to offer you this. If you want to start connecting with your soul and you want to start connecting to what it is you want, you can start by doing this simple thing of paying attention to your emotions. And I also love this approach because emotions have kind of gotten a bad rep, right? Like there's a lot of gurus out there that say, like, forget your emotions, override those and skip to the brain and the mind and control the mind to execute on fill in the blank, right? Execute on starting that business, execute on getting that raise, execute on finding your mate. And I don't love that because I truly believe that if we're skipping our emotions, we're literally leapfrogging our soul and what it is our soul wants. And we're leapfrogging this need to go inside and console parts of us that are unhealed and console parts of us that are afraid to do the thing that seems like we want to do. So the first step is really learning how to honor yourself. And the first step in learning how to honor yourself is paying attention to your emotions, because your emotions, your soul speaks in emotions. Okay. And so little things that you can do throughout the day when you're feeling activated or anxious or kind of nervous, that's a moment to go inside and say literally to yourself, what is happening right now? What's going on? What is making me anxious? Am I afraid of what other people will think of me? Am I just in the wrong moment? Are you in a meeting and you're just so activated and you're like, I don't want to be in this meeting. Those are things to really start paying attention to, and then like excavating and digging and figuring out where that is coming from. But if you just constantly override that emotion that is uncomfortable and you start numbing it, that's when we really start digging a hole into being in a place that we don't want to be in, that we don't enjoy, that is not aligned with our soul, because we're shoving down this experience and these emotions by numbing, whether that's doom scrolling, whether that's, diving deep into the Netflix world. And, I feel like Netflix gets a lot of crap, by the way. Amazon Prime, YouTube, wherever you're watching your shows these days, Apple TV, right? If you're constantly losing yourself in that fantasy land and you're never coming back to yourself, therein lies a problem, because you're not connecting with yourself. Doom scrolling, getting drunk all the time, right? Getting high all the time. I'm not judging those things, but if it's consistent and it's chronic, you're trying to cover something up. And ultimately, in my land, that is silencing your soul. Okay. So override those temptations to numb out and start turning inward, even when they're uncomfortable. Start turning inward to your emotions. That is paying attention to your soul. That will start building a relationship with yourself to figure out what it is you want. And then that will lead to honoring yourself. And then that'll lead to the path that your soul really came here to live. Okay. So when we start then paying attention to the emotions, then we can start thinking about more of step 2 of taking action. So I'll give you a good example. I met with someone a couple weeks ago. It was during a coaching conversation, and she was saying, I don't even really know what I want. I'm like, I think you do, actually. What excites you? What makes you feel happy and joy? And the more we talked, the more she realized actually sports was something that really she finds a lot of joy in for various reasons. She finds a lot of joy in being a helper, a supporter, more administrative, very organized. She loves that. She loves being a part of success. And so when we really start digging in and we start that feeling of lightness and happiness and ooh, wouldn't it be cool if you can start a sentence with, wouldn't it be cool if, you do know what you want. That is your soul being hey, here's the emotion of happiness and joy. Can I have more of that, please? But again, if we're overriding the kind of not so great emotions like the anxiety and the sadness and the unhappiness, we'll also override the good ones. And it's hard to then see. And that's why people end up feeling I don't really know what I want. Yes, you do, because your soul always knows. It's just a matter of connecting with your soul. Okay. So the big thing then is to take action from there. And so once you start really seeing it and feeling it and understanding it and pattern it, right? Oh, I feel a lot of joy watching sports. And I don't just feel that every now and then. I feel it all the time, even if I'm with this friend, or even if I'm at home just by myself, or even when I'm out in public and I hear somebody start talking about sports. I'm oh, sports, they're talking about sports. I want to get involved in that conversation, right? So pattern it a little bit too. One-offs are fine and good and exciting. And you can check in with yourself and say hey, you seem like you really enjoyed that, Little Miss Soul. So how do we get more of that? So that second component to really learning how to stop outsourcing what it is you want and start insourcing what it is you want. The second component of that is, once you hear those emotions and once you understand what it is you're starting to enjoy and love, then it's a matter of taking action. And guys, this sounds so simple, but it's actually quite difficult, because the minute your little toe starts moving in the direction of doing more of what you love and more of what the soul desires, and by the way, I say this all the time, but I always plug it in as much as I can, your purpose in life is fulfilling your soul's desires. Okay? So once your little toe starts moving in that direction of fulfilling your soul's desires, the mind will come in like a wrecking ball and tell you you're stupid. How dare you? People are going to think you're crazy. Think about it. If somebody's in med school and they're in their 3rd year or whatever it is, and they just are having all sorts of anxiety and frustrations, and they find themselves numbing out any minute they can. And they realize gosh, I don't want to do this. You cannot tell me that mom and dad are going to freak out and be like, stick it out, you're almost done, why would you change now? You cannot tell me the mind's not going to come in and be like, everybody's going to think you're a failure. Everybody's going to think that you dropped out of med school, that you couldn't hack it. Everybody's going to think you're a loser. The mind will play a crazy amount of warfare with you when you start taking that step towards something that you hear your soul desire and want. You're going to experience mental warfare. And so I say it very lightly. Hey, once you start attending to those emotions and once you start seeing what it is your soul desires, just take action. And I say it very lightly, but I want to warn you, it comes with a huge warning label. Your mind will come in and be like, no, don't do that, don't do that. That's going to create change. I don't like change. The reason I don't like change is because then I can't predict the future. And if I can't predict the future, then I will die. That's how extreme your mind gets. Your mind gets to that point where it's like, no. Any change equates to, I can't predict the future. And if the mind can't predict the future, it literally thinks it's going to die. So it doesn't ever want you to make change. So I'm warning you now, you're going to start making moves and your mind's going to come in like a wrecking ball and be like, no. And by the way, this is not your moment to shit on your brain. You don't say, fuck you, brain, get out of here. I don't want to hear from you. No, your brain is part of your family too. And your brain has value as well. So you have to kind of let it throw its fit. Let it out. Go ahead. Tell me all the things you're worried about. Okay, now my higher self can come in and go, thanks, mind. I really needed some of those warning signs. And I'm going to hedge against all of them now and make plans against them. So now you're becoming even more confident in taking that step forward because you've listened to the mind's warning signs. You've let it throw its fit. You've let it be a child. Okay. Okay, now cool. Now I know some of the warning signs. Now I need to get a hedge against those, right? So let's go back to the beginning. How do you stop outsourcing? How do you start insourcing? You start listening to yourself and what your soul wants, where your body feels good and relaxed and feels like it belongs, and this is where I'm supposed to be, and your soul is happy and joyful. And then you take action. You start taking action, but know that your mind is going to throw some fits in that process. And so the third part is just letting it snowball, right? So the third part is the snowballing component to your life, where when you start seeing and experiencing more and more joy and happiness and peace and abundance and fun, do more of that without the expectation that it's going to be some sort of monumental experience. One of the biggest things in our life that we can do to fulfill our purpose, which is fulfilling our soul's desires, is that once we kind of see a pathway, we see it, we start walking down it, and then we can just let it go. Take away the expectations, go through that cycle, right? The cycle of this natural cycle of life, right? Where you are in this like spring mode where, ooh, there's an idea. Let me plant the seeds. Let it grow. Let me see what kind of fruit comes of it. Then the fruit comes and you pluck the fruit and you eat the fruit and then you digest the fruit and the fruit comes out and then the fruit falls off the trees and the leaves fall off the trees. And now you're in winter. So the point of that ramble is that once you start doing this work, you also have to kind of let go of expectations, because expectations is what gets us in trouble of doing the wrong thing and not doing something that really makes our soul sing. Because then it's like, okay, I'm doing this and now I have all this pressure to perform and I have all this pressure to become successful and I have all this pressure that, oh, now I'm doing what I love, so I must also make $1 million doing what I love, right? And when those things don't happen, and we can't let go of the outcomes and then learn and come back to the table and do it all over again, that's the natural cycle of life. And that's what we need to allow happen. And this will allow us to really, really come into ourselves and have this like rhythm and not constantly feel like when I hear my soul speak and then I take action, then I expect an outcome. And when that outcome doesn't happen, I go right back into this, well, F it, I'm just going to go back to doing what I was doing because this isn't working. No, that's not the point. The point is to constantly fulfill your soul's desires without latching onto so much expectations and letting that natural rhythm take place where you go, ooh, yay, let me try. You plant the seeds, you grow the fruit, the trees and the fruit and all the things fall. And then you get into a winter and you can take stock of, okay, what just happened? How did that go? What was that like? What did I learn? And then you take back the fruit of your labors and you take the seeds back and you plant those back, and then now you're in spring again, right? And then you go through the process all over again. So I say all that because I want to make sure you don't have this expectation that everything has to be perfect the first time you start going out and taking that step forward toward fulfilling your soul's desires. It doesn't have to look perfect, it doesn't have to be perfect, but your higher self knows that I'm just going to run the process, and I'm going to keep taking stock, and I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to keep building, and I'm going to keep honoring myself, and I'm going to keep building upon what it is my soul wants. That's life, right? That is not outsourcing. That is insourcing. And this is how you really get to that point in life where you're truly becoming who you came here to be. And and if you keep going through the cycles and you keep honoring yourself and you keep checking in with yourself and you keep delivering on your soul's desires and you keep removing all the pressures that come with that, because the mind will want it to be perfect and want it to have certain outcomes, and then you start latching on to external expectations. So if you get to a point where you feel like you have no idea who you are, and you have no idea what it is you want, this is the result of an extreme amount of outsourcing your life. This is the result of not having any clue how to connect with yourself and having no clue on how to build a relationship with yourself, and getting into that place of I must perform, I must do these things to make other people happy or make the world happy or have fulfill these external expectations that I have built for myself or other people have built for myself. So I'm going to tie this up by saying, if this is you, if you're a person who's sitting in life and you're going, I have no idea what I want, I have no idea who I am, and I don't know how I got here, I can tell you how you got there. You got there because you've lived a life outsourcing what it is you want. And now the beauty of it is you're having these feelings, and that's awesome, because that is the signpost to say, stop outsourcing your life, start insourcing, start building a relationship with yourself, start understanding what your soul truly desires so that you can fulfill your purpose, so that you can start becoming who you came here to be. Right? So it's a beautiful place to be. It can be kind of frustrating, and it can kind of feel very lost. You might use the words, I feel very stuck. Beautiful. The beauty of it is you are in a place where it is becoming in your realm, like it's standing in front of you now. It's not hidden in the shadows of numbing. It's not hidden in the shadows of external expectations anymore. It's not hidden in the shadows of all this outsourcing to AI, to Google, to mom and dad, to friends, to everybody else. And it has brought itself forward. So if this is you and you have these feelings, awesome. I know it doesn't feel awesome, but it is awesome. Even if it's coming in the form of like anxiety and worry and stress, good, because that is your body and your soul and your mind working beautifully together to tell your higher self, this is not working for me. So it is absolutely this point in time and an opportunity for you to say, okay, I hear you, soul. I hear what you're saying. I'm okay. I'm ready to like do something about this at this point. So just in summary, the doing is going internal and stop outsourcing. The doing is start honoring your true desires and knowing what those true desires are. Start going internal and start building a relationship with yourself. And then once you start feeling it and hearing it and like going, yeah, okay, I got it. I'm feeling it. I think I know what I want. Then it's time to start executing on that with your mind's power and your mind's abilities. And go through that natural process so that you don't build up all these expectations of yourself and then find yourself back in the same place, unhappy, unsure of who you are, outsourcing all your decisions, outsourcing of who you should be, and building all those expectations around yourself that ultimately will just lead to you being very unhappy and unfulfilled and not really loving who you are because you're so removed from yourself. You're so removed from that beautiful relationship with yourself that we all have access to and all can start driving toward. And the big ticket item there is to understand that your purpose in life is to fulfill your soul's desires. How do you hear your soul? Through emotions. How do you deal with emotions? Check in with them, build a relationship with them, listen to them, understand them, and then you really utilize your beautiful, powerful tool of the mind to go execute, and then do that beautiful natural cycle of execute, learn, do it again, execute, learn, do it again. And don't give up on your soul and your soul's desires just because you get fear, or just because people think you're crazy, or just because it didn't work perfectly the first time, right? Oh gosh, if the people in history only did something one time and it didn't work and they gave up, gosh, we probably wouldn't even have electricity, right? We wouldn't have planes. Like, there's so many things in life we wouldn't have if the person who had it on their heart to try to do that thing gave up just because the first time wasn't what they expected. So drop the expectations, let yourself go through that natural spring, summer, fall, winter experience of whatever it is that you're doing that's fulfilling your soul's desires. Got it? All right, guys. Thank you so much again for being here. I've really enjoyed this one, and I hope you did too. Pass it along to a friend if it helped you. And as a reminder, go check out some of the freebies in my show notes. Get on the wait list for the Honor You Lab. I'd love to have you there so you can keep doing this work and keep going deeper and deeper into who you came here to be, and keep going deeper, deeper into this beautiful relationship with yourself. Okay? All right, guys, till next time, keep honoring yourself. Bye.